Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we try to work together to help each other in ministry and to serve the Lord. And today I have with us Dr. Robert Picirilli, a former professor at Welch College, former academic dean. And I also have Evangelist Bobby Jackson with us, former evangelist for Free Will Baptist, traveled all over the United States. And both of them are part of the Gospeliers quartet from days gone by. So welcome you two to our podcast today.
Thank you.
Yeah. We're glad to have you all here. So tell us, how did you all meet? How did you come to know each other?
Well, I think we'd better let Bobby tell the first story anyway.
When we came to college, the group from North Carolina, Gene Waddell and I were together. James Raper was also from Goldsboro. And so standing in the registration line, we just started to sing. Waddell and I had sung together. James Earl sang bass. Ray Turnage wasn't far away. So we got four fellas together and started singing Just a Little Talk with Jesus. And it went from that till we started singing some of the occasions at school, and then they sent us out for to represent the school. The other quartets had gone and were still going, and Picirilli sang in one of the other quartets. So it was during that year that because Ray had to go to work and subsidize his tuition at school, and he couldn't go out all the time. Dr. Picirilli drifted to our quartet and started singing baritone. James Earl sang bass. Gene Waddell sang first tenor, and I sang second tenor. And then we started going out for the school, and it established a relationship that continued for 60 years, and we kept singing till we couldn't sing anymore. So that's how it got started. Freshman year in college, Pick had already been there for a year, so he had sung in the previous quartets. And then as far as the name Gospeliers, he can tell you more about that, because that name, I think, we didn't originate that name. That name came from either Henry Melvin or maybe they had called some other of the college quartets by the same name. He knows more about what happened before that than I do.
Yeah, Henry Melvin is the one that came up with the name Gospeliers. The first quartet that went out for the school went out in the summer of '49. And Henry Melvin named them the Gospeliers. And then I went out with a group in the second year, in the summer of 1950. And so all the quartets for the first number of years were named the Gospeliers.
And you guys went everywhere, didn't you?
Yeah.
And raised funds for the college as well as for yourself?
Well, we didn't raise a whole lot for ourselves. I don't remember exactly what we were paid when we were touring during the summer, but it wasn't very good. But then, of course, we had all of our meals and laundry and stuff like that taken care of. But we raised funds for the school. In those days, the idea of education for the ministry wasn't all that fully accepted across the denomination. So one of the things we were doing was trying to convince people about the need for education for the ministry and for Christian work and service. And so we often encountered some resistance in that regard. But I think at least the quartets, not just ours, but others as well, other traveling groups for the college, probably played a fairly significant role in promoting education in the denomination and promoting the Bible college.
So it helped people notice what you guys were doing.
Well, and
helpful.
not raising funds, but students, because what
That's
would
true,
happen is
yeah.
you'd go visit church and you would appeal to some students, and so you not only raised funds, but you helped in the enrollment by encouraging students to come. And like I said, probably my wife Jane from Illinois, that quartet was in Illinois the summer before she came to school that fall. And so that's an indication that not only in fundraising but also in encouraging students to come to the school, the quartets had an effect in public relations.
So you guys are interacting with one another, and I can't help but notice you were the moderator of the National Association of Free Will Baptists. I think you were the moderator first, weren't you, or a clerk? And,
yeah, I was clerk and then moderator.
And Brother Eugene Waddell was over international missions. And, James Earl Raper was on I remember as a student, he was on the board of Free Will Baptist Bible College, and I'm sure the others.
Yes, he was also superintendent of the children's home up in East Tennessee for a number of years.
So a lot of leadership came out of the Gospelier quartet as well.
Well, that's probably true. It's also true that traveling for the college widely gets you more well-known. So it works both ways. Yeah, right. It works both ways.
Well, it basically opened the doors for the beginning of my evangelistic ministry, because the churches we went to sing and preach, because our services were basically, we not only represented college, we tried to have an evangelistic service. We tried to make an appeal to folks and get people saved. And if you had a pretty good service, then the pastor would say to me after, "We want you to come hold revival meeting." Well, it opened a lot of doors initially for the ministry that I had over the years.
So it was good for the college. It was helping you guys in your future ministry.
Yes, absolutely.
You mentioned that education was not that well accepted, but you guys also ended up going off to graduate school and seminary and so forth. Even James Earl Raper went, didn't he? How did that come about?
All four of us went to grad school. Now, I graduated the year before the other three, before Bobby and Eugene and James Earl graduated, and I went on to Bob Jones. And then when they graduated, James Earl and Bobby came to Bob Jones, and Eugene went to Columbia, to the graduate school at Columbia Bible College in South Carolina. And so we all went to graduate school. That was also relatively new for Free Will Baptists at that period of time. By the way, we, during at least the first semester of that first year after they joined us in graduate schools, we continued to sing and travel for the college, represented Free Will Baptist Bible College while we were in graduate school for the first semester of that year. And then James Earl felt he needed something more than that in the way of income, and took a church there right near Bob Jones. So that's when we stopped singing pretty much every weekend. But over the years, from then on until relatively recently, we continued to sing maybe a time or two every year in revival meetings or things of that sort. So we sang for over 50 years.
And how did that come about, that you guys stayed together like that, kept singing and doing things together from time to time?
Well, and I think maybe the harmony in our friendship was better than the harmony in our music, because we did get real attached to each other for his friendliness. And I think Pick would probably agree that in all those years and all those travels, there never was any serious crack in that fellowship or disagreements that disrupted the relationship. And I think it's unusual, especially for four fellows singing a quartet, to get along for 50 years without ever having any kind of argument that breaks them up. Did a lot of arguing for fun every now and then. You know?
So y'all weren't like the Beatles and those other groups of the days. Y'all could work your differences out and keep on moving down the way.
one of the things that we sometimes said, at least I sometimes said, we had enough of a good relationship that if we disagreed about something, we could say so, and say so in a sort of a semi-joking, but at the same time semi-serious way, and get on past it and go on.
And went ahead and got it out there in the open, and went ahead and dealt with it and so forth. Let's go back for just a minute to that whole graduate school business. Why did y'all go to graduate school? Because back then people didn't do that, but all of you did. So something happened there. You know, like today, you were at Welch College, Dr. Picirilli, and people are talking about, well, you know, you need to go to seminary, you need to go to graduate school. Was that already happening back in the 50s, or how did y'all end up like that?
I don't remember that we got any encouragement particularly to go to school. Do you?
No.
I don't think we heard a lot about that. Now, both Dr. Johnson and Dr. Thigpen, of course, at that time they weren't being doctored, but anyway, both of them had gone to Bob Jones, and the school was not accredited, so there were limited places that would have accepted our credits or our degree, and so I suppose that probably contributed to the idea of Bob Jones. And we also were familiar with Columbia Bible College, particularly as an institution for missions in those days. And Eugene Waddell had an inclination toward missions as he developed throughout his life. And so Columbia appealed to him for that reason. So anyway, I felt something of the desire to become a teacher, and perhaps even to return to the Bible College as a teacher. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to go on and further my education, and did so.
And so that's kind of, you had that in your mind,
well, let's see, probably James Earl and I went to Bob Jones because Picirilli was there. He had gone on there, and he gave a favorable
review there, and he needed some help, perhaps.
Yeah, and so, in fact, I remember Pick advised me in my senior year to take another course of English so there would not be a deficiency in the undergraduate when I got to Bob Jones. So James Earl and I probably were following Picirilli's exams, just having gone and being very satisfied with what he was getting there, and so. But I had no plans for as being a teacher. In fact, I had no plans at all, to tell you the truth. And so I don't know why I went to graduate school to get a master's, other than I thought, well, you know, at the time that I didn't know what I would pursue beyond that. But once I finished the master's, I sure didn't want to go through the process Picirilli was going through to get a PhD to preach to people in Free Will Baptist churches scattered around the country, because there wouldn't be much need of me discussing Greek prepositions with them.
They might not like that too good. So, they might not care.
Yeah.
And so, but you guys did your education. You went back to the Bible College. You went off traveling and doing evangelist work, but yet you stayed in touch without, I don't think either one of you are on Facebook or having social media. So how have you done that over all these years, staying in touch with each other, getting together and singing from time to time and doing that? How's that all worked out?
Well, that's sort of like asking, how do we stay in touch with our family? You know, the closeness was already there, and our staying in touch was like you say, how you stay in touch with your brothers and sisters.
You go see them at Christmas and so forth.
That closeness was there, and then the opportunities would come If I was in an evangelistic meeting, if I was preaching revival in Nashville, and Pick was already here, and Waddell was already here, and it's easy to bring Raper to here.
Yes.
So whether I was at Kofer's or at wherever, the quartet would sing something. Now, sometimes they'd come and sing every night, all during the week. So that added to our having opportunities to continue to sing. And then when Waddell pastored a church, if he had a meeting and I went, well, it's easy to get the other two guys to come. And then a few times we got invitations for cooperative meetings to go to a place a group of churches would sponsor it. In the early days, we had one such meeting in Winterville, North Carolina, in the school gymnasium over there. But before us, how we stayed in touch with each other, that's sort of like saying, how do you stay in touch with your family?
Yeah. It was just a natural thing.
They were certainly closer to me than a lot of blood kin.
Anytime we would be together, whatever the reason was, like, for instance, in attendance at a national meeting, for instance, then we would get together and sing. Sometimes we might get together in the restroom in the building where the National Association was meeting and sing, and just for the enjoyment of singing.
And you seem to every fall go down to North South Carolina. Have you been doing that like several years now?
Well, after I retired. Yeah, my wife and I started doing that after we retired.
And kind of staying in
touch. And then relatively recently, after we had retired from all being so busy, we started getting together at Chimney Rock, North Carolina. James Earl's brother had a place there, and it was real nice and convenient along that little rocky river. And for how many years, Pick? 5 or 6?
I'd say 7 or 8 years. We probably spent a week there every fall.
We would spend a week there and just sit on that screened-in back porch and talk about where we've been, what we've done, you know. Because at our age now, you don't talk about where you're going, what you're going to do. You talk about where you've been, what you've done.
And what has happened and so forth. So I don't know that we have that. A lot of people probably are envious, and maybe or they would like to have the kind of relationship you guys have had over the years. Your suggestion for trying to do something like that, do you have any suggestions for people trying to build those kinds of bonds?
Well, I haven't thought about how to do that. It just came naturally to us, I guess. I always have said, or at least for many years have said, that friends is one of the manifestations of God's grace. I think friendship is an important thing for anybody. So, whatever it takes to cultivate a friendship,
Yes, it's a way God blesses us, and you can't be having hang-ups, and also you can't be not bringing up things that bother you and so forth. And then got to be intentional to go see them or stay at Chimney Rock or sing in the bathroom or whatever. Sounds like.
Exactly.
So it's worked pretty well for you guys over the years.
Well, and probably with a person like Picirilli, who has spent his life here in Nashville, he has developed another whole circle of local friends here because he's been at Kofer's all these years. It was a little bit more difficult for us just spending a week in a place to develop real long-lasting friendships outside of this quartet and families or whatever. So once we landed in Greenville, I have developed some local friends now that are there. But a lot has to do with spending time with people and being in the same locality where they are and having enough in common to enjoy being with one another. Because I think one of the evidence of friendship is when you enjoy being with somebody. When somebody's easy to be with.
Yeah. So there's a lot of lessons. A lot of people in the ministry be listening to this podcast. There's a lot of lessons they can learn about that. I'm wondering if there's any other advice or maybe some recommendations you might give to folks in the ministry. I know we're sometimes reticent to do that, but you guys have been through ministry for a bit here over the years. What might you suggest to folks?
Well, when you start asking me for suggestions about how to do something, I always have difficulty with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think friendship is worth pursuing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes you have to be intentional, to use a word that's common these days.
Mm-hmm.
You have to deliberately do things to pursue friendship. You make an effort, even if somebody didn't contact you when you thought they might have, you still go ahead and make the contact. You try to keep that friendship alive. I think everybody would be well advised to have a group of people, a circle of people that they consider to be their close friends,
mm-hmm.
and then to make sure they just make a point to
mm-hmm.
Stay in contact with them, call them,
mm-hmm.
touch base with them, send them a letter or whatever.
That's good.
These days, nobody writes letters anymore, but
It wouldn't be a bad thing.
Email or text or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Now, see, the evidence of what he's saying is the only reason I'm here now
Uh-huh.
is about a month ago he called my house in Greenville, North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, I'm tired of you saying you're going to plan to come to Nashville to see me. Put this phone down and go buy some plane tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so we had thought and we had planned. But now for a week, while we've enjoyed spending time together, I probably wouldn't have done it immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have put it off, and by next spring we'd have been so sick we couldn't, or
Yes,
something.
yes.
But,
So it
an
worked.
evidence
Yeah.
of him practicing what he's preaching
That's good.
is the fact that that the reason we're both sitting
That's
here now
right.
is he just called and said, put that phone down and go buy some plane tickets.
That's good. That's good. So that's a good lesson for all of us. Keep up with folks through the years. Be easy to kind of roll with things, get along with one another, and try to help each other as we go through the ministry. Well, we appreciate both of you guys, what you've done for Free Will Baptist in particular all through the years, your important ministry. And we just thank you also for coming by on it's really an ugly day, but you guys have come by on an ugly day to give us the time to do this. So thank you for the time you put in the ministry and for stopping by and doing this podcast with us today.